Well, Hannah, this conversation was long overdue. So thanks for making time to join me today.
I'm so honored. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I've respected your leadership from afar and now a little bit up closer and just really value the work that you're doing.
Well, likewise. I'd love for you to give the listeners a little more like intro to you. Tell us about you and tell us about the organization that you lead, Generation Distinct.
Sure. Well, I'm Hannah Gronowski Barnett, and I'm the CEO and founder of a nonprofit called Generation Distinct. And the whole idea and vision behind the organization is that we truly want to bridge conversations with the next generation. So we're using conversations that they're already having, conversations around passion, purpose, and justice to bring them into conversations about Jesus, the gospel, and the Great Commission. And we're helping them understand not just the big questions of the who of Jesus, but also what it actually means to discover their role in what we like to call the mission of Jesus. And so we're identifying for them the wrong that they were born to make right. We teach the next generation that we believe that every single one of them was not an extra addition or a last minute part of the puzzle in the world, but they have an essential critical part of what this world needs in order to look more and more like what we believe it was originally designed to look like. And so that is what we call for them the wrong they were born to make right. And that is truly my passion. I say personally, as a human, my calling is to unleash leaders into their calling. I am excited every single time I get to watch a young leader have that light bulb moment where they understand, man, this is what I was created to do. This is the role I was born to make right. And then watching them go out and do it and make impact and ripples in ways I never could just inspires me and reminds me every time of why we do what we do. So that's one part of my role. I'm also an author of a book called Generation Distinct, written for young leaders to help them discover really this kind of different life where we devote ourselves to the wrong we were born to make right. Also speaker and podcast host. And I'm also a wife to an awesome guy named Aaron. And I live in my favorite city in the world, Chicago, where you can find me just literally soaking in every moment. I love where I live. It's cold right now, but I
Right.
still love where I live. And I just like to say that living in a cold city makes me just a little bit of a grittier leader. So I'll just give myself that
Good for
title.
you. I was going to say, I live about 3 hours north of you in central Wisconsin, and I grew up here, but then was in Tennessee and California. And then I moved back 5 years ago. And I'm like, oh, you're definitely a grittier, more resilient person when you live through the winters. Like,
I agree.
It's true.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of refining process,
It really is. It really is. Like the first couple of winters I was back, I was like, whoo, I got a little soft. I got a little like, and now people laugh at me because I'm like, 10 degrees. Yeah, I'm still going for my run, just put the gear on and keep moving,
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
we can't
funny.
stop living our lives,
No, that's just it. And I really have learned like the beauty of being out in it. Like if I don't get outside every day, I go a little stir crazy, and it really doesn't matter the temperature. And I actually don't like the cold, but you just learn, get the right gear and get out there and just find the beauty in it. And that has served me well. So
it's a game changer. Aaron and I had to find a way to look forward to the winter, and we both love snowboarding. So last year we invested in all of the gear and all of that. And so even though we don't live in the mountains, we'll go up to Wisconsin, we'll find some of those little hills.
Yeah.
That all makes it a little better for us to look forward to at least one thing about the winter,
That's so perfect. I love that so much. Okay, so I want to know, I love just the backstory and how you showcased what you want to do in equipping the next generation.
Sure.
And how that's really even, just become your passion and calling is to help them find their passion and calling. And I probably butchered the way you said that, but that's the way I heard it. But where did that come from? Like, how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. When I look back, I recognize that I had so many unfair advantages, right? And we all enter into life in different spaces and experiences. But one of my unfair advantages, as I look back, is that time after time I had leaders who called out greatness in me, who called out leadership, who invested in me, who believed in me before I had any reason to be believed in. And I truly believe that that was one of the most influential pieces that got me to where I was today. And the first people were my parents. My parents are phenomenal leaders in their own rights, but they always created space for me to say, what am I passionate about? And if I would be something simple, like I want to learn guitar lessons, I would have a guitar teacher a week later. You know, those little moments where I got to dream about who I wanted to be, and my parents would help make that possible, right? And so that was the first glimpse. And then when I was a teenager, I was serving at my local church, and there was a woman who noticed that I was really good at speaking and I was comfortable being in front of people. And so when I was about 13 years old, she put me on stage in front of the kids in the kids ministry. And it was a large church. There was a lot of kids, and I got to teach the kids Bible stories and get used to being in front of people and explain Bible stories in a very simple way. And then when I was a little bit older, about 16 or so, I started serving at a church plant, and the pastor there said, hey, I see leadership in you. I see amazing communication. I think you should start leading. And so put me on stage during the main service to do announcements, or got to start leading a whole team of 40 volunteers when I was 18. I mean, these leaders just kept giving me opportunity. And it's not because I was anything special or anything remarkable, but I had leaders who believed in me, and it changed the game forever. And so by the time that I was around 20 years old, I recognized, man, I've had all of this, but when I look at a lot of my peers, they're not seeming to have the same support system, the same clarity around what their calling is. And so I was asking a lot of questions as to why. Why is it that the next generation I'm seeing around me don't necessarily feel as clear or as supported or prepared even to step into their calling? And a lot of the questions that I was asking was met with this answer of a lack of support system, a lack of opportunity, a lack of anybody looking them in the eyes and saying, hey, what are you passionate about? What are you excited about? What is your purpose? And a lot of us, as I'm the youngest millennial or oldest Gen Z, so I'm kind of right in the middle of those two. And so I kind of relate to both generations in some ways. And so for us as millennials, I'll assume my millennial title for a minute. For us as millennials, we kind of came into the workspace amidst a generation who really valued longevity, who really valued titles and positions. And so when we came on the scene passionate and excited and wanting to change the world and make an impact, that was a little bit surprising. And now Gen Z is coming up, and for all the millennials that talked about wanting to change the world, Gen Z is going to change the world. They're taking action. And so what that created was some separation, I think, between some generations where there was a lack of understanding. So I started to dream about what it would look like if I could help not just myself, but actually an entire generation to discover the wrong that they were born to make right. What would happen if we could actually pair what I saw as the passion of the next generation with real strategy for how they could walk off those passions? How much more action would we see come out of their lives? And ultimately, how much more would the world change in the ways that we all agree it does need to change? So that's really what we set out to do. And so we developed an entire 6-month training program for young leaders where they have coaching. They're equipped with leaders who believe in them, who see value in them. And they also go through content to help them identify the wrong they were born to make right, and then be trained on their unique passion. And by the end of it, they have an I exist statement. They have goals for how exactly they're going to start their passions and launch their visions for the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years. And we're unleashing young leaders now to go out into the world with an actual strategy and clarity and mentorship for how they were uniquely born and change the world.
That is so huge. I love that you identified the gift that it was to have leaders who just saw you and believed in you. I coach leaders a lot in this. I'm like, give the gift of belief. Like, people need to be believed in. Like, I can resonate I had very similar situations where I had people who just gave me opportunity I didn't deserve.
Okay.
I hadn't showcased that I was capable, but because
Yeah.
of their belief, I rose to the challenge. Like it gave me that
Right.
confidence and that courage to go, you see this in me? Well, maybe I
Yes,
can. And
exactly.
so those voices, and I think, in some ways I feel like I watch my generation and I feel like sometimes and I'm Gen X, we
Yeah.
we push so hard to find our way. Because I think one of the smaller generations, we were kind of sandwiched
Yes.
between boomers and millennials. And
Yes.
sometimes we tried to play the game that the boomers had of the longevity and
Right.
just be head down, work hard, find your way. And then we got to a stage where it was like we just realized we weren't achieving everything we hoped to achieve.
Yes.
And we weren't really looking at the people coming up behind us and going,
Right.
how do basically, I think sometimes we were pretty selfish. And
Right.
so that's
Wow.
one of the things I'm always encouraging leaders is I think, sometimes we're trying so hard to succeed that we're not noticing the gift we can give to leaders a step or two behind us. And I
Right.
remember very vividly, there was a leader that I worked for back in the music business. And this leader frustrated me because I felt like they just didn't have time for me. They didn't see me.
Yes.
They
Yes.
I felt like there was so much they could have done to help me grow in my journey and in
Yes.
career. And for whatever reason, that individual didn't invest in me. And it
Wow.
was super discouraging. Like I was like, I longed for it. I wanted it. And
Yes.
that person moved on to another role. I got promoted and all of a sudden into that role. And all of a
Mm.
sudden, I recognized the pressure and the responsibility and all the things that individual was navigating in the
Yes.
job that they were in. And it gave me so much greater compassion for why
Right.
I wasn't the top of their mind. Right.
Yes.
Because I was like, it was kind of all about me, that I felt like this person should be investing in me. And then I got
Yes.
into their shoes and I realized, oh, there's so much more going on. So
Yes.
when leaders have those places of responsibility, I recognize the pressure and the
Yes.
responsibility and all the things they have going on, but just a fraction. It doesn't take much, right? It's just like the
Right.
acknowledgement, the seeing, and that gift
Right.
of belief is so phenomenal for
It really does
leaders.
change everything. It really does change everything, especially for the next generation. Because, the interesting part about being a young leader that I often try and help other more senior leaders understand, because we can so often forget. I'm 27 myself, and I still sometimes forget what it was like when I was 20 years old and starting Generation Distinct. What I tell senior leaders often is, hey, do you remember when you were 20 years old? And do you remember all of the crazy life transitions that were happening, right? I mean, maybe
Right.
the first time you had moved out of your parents' house, maybe for the first time you were actually interested in somebody in a serious way. Maybe you were at college and you were trying to figure out, okay, do I fit in this college? Do I like this college? Do I want to transfer to a different college? Do I like my major? Should I change my major? Will my major make me any money when I move out? When I finish college, am I going back to my parents? Am I going to a new city? Oh, wait, this person, I think I want to marry them. Should I marry them? Should I not marry them? And then will we have kids? Will we not have kids? All those big life shifts that are happening in
Yeah.
your early years.
Yeah.
Now, combine that with all the pressures of being a leader, all of the struggles of starting something, all of the struggles of wanting to make an impact, put that all together. It's a very unique experience for somebody to be a young leader.
Sure.
And so if you
Yeah.
have young leaders in organizations, it's so important, I believe, to be so compassionate to their experience as well. And like you said, it doesn't take much, but simply looking at them when they are probably trying to make ends meet and pay student loans and figure out their relationships, and they're feeling lonely and they're
Right.
maybe far from families. If you can just look at them and say, hey, I want you to know that here you're believed in and you're safe.
Yeah.
That makes the world of difference. One of our
So good.
mantras of Generation Distinct, which we did not do some strategic day of planning to come up with this mantra. It just happened because we started saying it to our young leaders and it stuck. And what we say to them almost every time we interact with them is, hey, I want you to know we believe in you.
Mm.
And truly we have heard back from young leaders in our program that they have said one of the most impactful parts of the entire 6-month cohort is just hearing those words.
Wow.
Because they want to change the world. They want to make an impact. But if they don't know if they even have a safe place to land when they fail or come to when they're struggling, it's so hard to do it all. And so I truly agree. I think one of the best gifts we can give the next generation is if we are leading them, for us to remind them. We don't have to be their psychologist. We don't have to be their mom or dad, but we can say, hey, I believe in you. I see value in you, and tell them why. Tell them, hey, I noticed how you interacted with that other staff person, and that was phenomenal leadership. Or, hey, I noticed you had a great idea in that staff meeting, and I want to honor that. And I also noticed the rest of the senior leaders didn't acknowledge it and maybe skip right over you. I'm sorry that happened, but I want you to know that I noticed it, right? Like, make them seen in a time of their life when they might feel like everything's changing and they might feel really unseen in that season.
Yeah, that's really good. I didn't prep you with this question, Hannah, but I'm curious just hearing you talk about that. You know, one of the things that I will sometimes hear from more senior leaders is the perception that younger leaders want everything right now, and they're impatient for time and process. Sure. You're smiling. So like, what do you say to that? Like, I'm guessing there's a bit of a misunderstanding between the two, but yeah, speak to that a little bit.
You know, it's interesting because I actually am of the belief that when there is a stereotype, it's because it's rooted in something, right? And so I actually believe there's an element of truth to that. And the struggle, though, is, do we look at that as a negative, or do we look at that as a positive attribute that needs to be molded and shaped, right? So, for example, the next generation that I work with, you know, we've had, we launched our cohort program about 18 months ago. We've had 130 young leaders go through our program, and we get a lot of life touch points with these young leaders. And so one thing that we'll hear often is a frustration that they have in some organization they're working within, whether it's their jobs, their local churches, a nonprofit they're working with, that they have all these ideas, all these dreams that they believe would make the organization better, and nobody's listening to them, and they're so frustrated.
Right.
And the reality is they actually might have some really good ideas. And honestly, I also can empathize with the senior leader who, now that I'm, you know, again, I'm only 27, but I've been leading this for a little bit, and we have systems in place, and we have strategies, and we have timelines, and we have commitments, and we have budgets, and I have a board I report to. I recognize more. I can't just say yes to every idea that comes along. And so what I believe is really important is to say to these young leaders is never, ever to criticize them for that passion. Because what it goes back to is Generation Z, millennials had incredible passion. Gen Z has incredible passion paired with an ability to take action whether or not anybody gives them permission. Ooh. The danger, though, that happens then is that if we don't partner with Gen Z will build without us. They're going to build with or without us. I believe it's better if we can mentor them through their building. I believe it'll be better for the whole world if we can partner with the next generation. So what I would say is the next time that a young leader comes to you, and it's so frustrating, I get it now. Trust me, I'm starting to more and more. And they come to you and they say, you know, the way that you did that social media post, it could have been totally like this, or the way that staff meeting was run, or have you ever thought, or what if we began? I want you to first affirm the passion that they have.
Yeah.
And I want you to affirm that they're thinking like an owner in your organization.
Ooh,
so many leaders teach, be an owner, act like an owner, have initiative. Well, Gen Z has that on steroids. They have 1,000% like full on ownership. And so it's okay to affirm that while also redirecting the direction, right? Like redirecting where that's going. And so you can affirm, hey, I love your passion. You're thinking like an owner. We need more of people like you in this organization. Hey, what's one step we can take towards that end? So maybe
I love it.
The next generation in your organization is saying, hey, at staff meetings, we need to be more relational. I want to hear people's stories. Let's get authentic and vulnerable. And you're thinking, oh my goodness, we have 30 minutes. I barely have time in my calendar. I'm trying to get through all the action items, right? What's one step? And ask them, invite them. So often Gen Z has all the good ideas, but when a leader asks them, how do you actually execute that? They have no idea. They want the leader to do that themselves.
Sure.
So inviting them into having to think critically about, well, what would that entail? Even presenting with them, hey, that's a great idea. I think you're right. Authenticity, vulnerability matters a lot to me. Here's the reality. Here's what we're working with. We're working with 30 minutes and we have to get through 5 action items. How can we integrate vulnerability into a meeting with those kinds of dynamics? Get
That's
them
great.
without thinking critically. And now you're partnering with to achieve something. And maybe it's a, hey, we're going to go around in a 30-minute or a 30 seconds, lightning round. Want everyone to rate your last work week from 1 to 10. Maybe that's the only way you start implementing vulnerability. But if that Gen Zer helped come up with that,
right,
gosh, they're going to feel seen and understood and like they matter in your organization. So I think it's possible to affirm the qualities without just unleashing them to do whatever kind of havoc you want to run in the organization.
I love that so much, Hannah, because I think, you're coaching us really well. Acknowledge there's a desire for ownership. They're demonstrating ownership. We say we want ownership and self-accountability within our teams. And if we squash that, well, then of course they're going to move on, because then that's some of the criticism is that they'll just kind of move on. They have more opportunities than ever. And so it's not scary for them to go, I'll just move on to something else because those opportunities, or they'll create it, So, but it's the coaching piece. It's the I'm in context, right? So, Gen Zer brings an idea to me and I'm immediately filtering through all the reasons why that might not work, right? Because I'm just wired to troubleshoot as a leader.
Right.
But doing what you encouraged us of, like, acknowledging the ownership, the passion, they're trying to contribute to our organization. Like they're trying to contribute to our mission. So then do what you said, give them context. Okay, here's our reality. Let's talk to me. How would we do this? Give me some, and what you said, you're then helping them develop problem solving skills that actually help them figure out, how do I take action on ideas, which is great coaching. I think sometimes more senior leaders forget that younger team members, younger leaders coming in don't have all of we kind of assume they know it all, but they don't. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean, they just haven't had the same experience, or they don't sit at the same seat. And so that's powerful. That's huge. Okay.
I absolutely.
You said, when you were talking about Generation Distinct, you said like passion, purpose, and justice being, 3 core pieces of what you guys do. Those first 2 words, passion and purpose, they are coming up all over in the data on employee engagement and cultures and staff culture. I have referenced the last couple of episodes of the podcast about how employees, like the desire for purpose and fulfillment in their work is like this growing just need, and what people are identifying. I'd love your thoughts on just on that concept, and like, is that what you're seeing? What do we need to know about that? Why is purpose so important? And I kind of assume, I think it's more so for the younger generations. I kind of think it's important for everybody. I mean, the data is showing up for all employees, but some of those studies are showing Gen Z and millennial, it's significantly more important. So is that what you're seeing? And how would you respond to that?
Absolutely. I truly believe in many ways, the gift of this to organizations today is they have an easy key to access the buy-in of the next generation in your organization. If you tie anything you're doing to unleash the purpose in the young people in your organization, you will see remarkable buy-in every time. I truly believe that. The interesting thing, though, that I believe is different between maybe the statistics we're seeing in Gen X or boomers and their desire for purpose, even millennials are in their 40s now, right? They're not necessarily all the next generation. Millennials are kind of on the edge of this, but especially with Gen Z, is there's a difference between what kind of purpose draws them in. What I'm seeing is that Gen X and boomers and the older half of millennials are more interested in if the organization has a compelling mission or compelling purpose, they can attach their purpose to the organizations and be so fulfilled. And that's beautiful. That's so fantastic. The challenge is that with young millennials and Gen Z, they're not so interested in connecting their passion or purpose with an organization's. They want to know how the organization is going to help unleash their purpose and their passion. Now, this is a tension point. It's a tension point.
Because at first it sounds selfish to me. Can I say that? Is that like
absolutely you can sound it? And in some ways, it actually is. I don't know that it is always as altruistic as we would like to believe, right? I mean, Time magazine, back when millennials were the younger generation, they came out with an article called the me generation was millennials. But at the same time, they were also breaking the statistics for being the most socially justice conscious generation of all time, right? So what do you do in that paradox? What we have to recognize is, and again, I'm a millennial and Gen Z, I can go first. A lot of my desire to change the world is not this unselfish, radical love for humanity. I'll be honest, some of it is just, it feels really exciting.
For sure.
It feels really good to change the world. I want my purpose to be unleashed. So again, we find ourselves back then in the opportunity between acknowledging the good in what that is in Gen Z, while also coaching them to be better. And so specifically for Gen Z, we'll talk about them for here a minute. What I'm seeing in Gen Z, again, I'm 27, I'm kind of on the edge. People would say they're probably the young or the oldest is 26, 27 right now. So if you have those people in your organization, that's who we're talking about.
Sure.
What the opportunity is here, and again, we're even seeing this within our organization, the young leaders we're working with, is if we were to just cast the vision for Generation Distinct of saying, hey, this is what we're trying to do in the world. We're trying to help a generation understand their purpose. I don't think we'd see the same buy-in. But the way that we're shifting our language, again, we still have a mission statement. We still have a board we report to. We still have budgets and numbers we have to hit. But when we shift our language to make it about, hey, we want to unleash the purpose and the passion within you. We want to involve you in what we're doing. And this outworks it in very simple ways. Even on the staff I'm leading, the staff that I'm leading is all Gen Z and millennials as well. So for example, one of the young men who was on our staff for a long time, really brilliant, really sharp. He was in college at the same time, so 2021. And one of his other passions, in addition to Generation Distinct, was that he was building a YouTube channel, and he was very good at it, and it was blowing up. And it was not just some silly YouTube channel. It was valuable content. He was teaching, he was leading, it was phenomenal. And it was blowing up as he was on staff. Now, I've seen many organizations who are not familiar with Gen Z be afraid of anything that the individual's doing outside of your organization or outside of their work, because you assume it might be a threat to the quality of work they can bring to the organization. That is not true with Gen Z. I have seen time after time, if we squash what Gen Z is doing to dream outside of just their 9 to 5 or just dream outside of what they're doing with your organization, they will disengage from what you're doing so quickly. They need environments where they can work and be fully engaged in their 9 to 5, but where you also are saying, hey, I heard you're starting some nonprofit to help women out of human trafficking. Tell me about that. And they can say, yeah, on my weekends, I'm doing this, and we're going to march, and we're going to do, write these letters to Congress, and that you would not be afraid of that. You would not assume that they're not going to work as hard for you, but rather you saying, hey, I see you. I value that. Hey, can I donate to your cause? Hey, can our company support that, sponsor your walk? When you partner with the unique purpose and passion of the next generation in your organization, they will then have a greater buy-in for what you're doing as well. That's good. So it doesn't mean that none of them are going to come work for organizations. I believe Gen Z is going to work for organizations that create space for them to dream. So for example, very simple way this gentleman's name was Austin, who was growing the YouTube channel on staff. And at almost every staff meeting, I would say, Austin, what's your count? Like, what did you get to subscribers this month? And he would announce it, and we'd all celebrate and affirm and say, hey, we love that you're succeeding in the passions you have and in Generation Distinct. And so just little ways of celebrating and highlighting the good things that your Gen Z members of your organization are doing outside of your work helps them understand that you care about their purpose as a human, which then in turn will help them care about your purpose as an organization.
Hannah, that's brilliant. That's so helpful. I think, I mean, again, I think sometimes just in our busyness, we get short-sighted, and
Absolutely.
and I think scarcity, and fear, keep us from going, you know what, the generosity of spirit of,
right.
Hey, I want to, tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you're passionate about. Tell me what you're working on, in this side thing you're doing, and being actually interested and curious, and how that in turn, it just builds trust and loyalty. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? I mean,
exactly.
Patrick Lencioni in his work says of the 5 dysfunctions of the team, the lack of trust is the thing that so it's that's a key trust builder with the younger generation right now, is caring about what they care about. And if we can put a little time and energy into that, then their commitment and their loyalty to what we're doing
is off the charts.
Yeah. That's so fantastic. All right. I'll give you a last chance. Anything else you should coach those of us that are maybe older millennials or Gen Xers and above, who are trying to figure out, how do we do this well? How do we create healthy cultures? How do we build great leaders and bridge the gap between the generations? What else would you tell us today?
Yes, I would say just be patient with them. Something that I've even been feeling, again, as I'm only 27, I'm not that far ahead of them, but I'm already starting to see the difference between myself and younger Gen Z, is when I'm in a meeting with somebody and we're talking about organizational stuff, right? So even yesterday, I was meeting with a young leader who is going to be doing an internship with us. And so we were talking through the logistics and what projects she'll be working on. And I was hearing about some of the stuff that's happening in her friendships. And I was hearing about some of the tension she's feeling and how this friend hurt her in a really specific way. And I was empathizing with it. And I was hearing about some of the family hardships she's struggling with. And this young leader is 20 years old, and she is sharp and she is brilliant, and she's going to be an amazing intern. And she's also 20. And there are just experiences of a 20-year-old that needs compassion in the midst of calling them into leadership. And so if you have a value of helping young leaders succeed, and that's a huge value of mine. I want to see young people lead at a younger age, because I believe God can use them. I believe that they are capable and brilliant if we coach them and invest in them. If we want to have young leaders a part of our organizations and teams, we just have to acknowledge they are young, which means we give them grace. When they don't process that hurt from a friend the same way that we would, it's because they're young. When they're bringing their hurt from the boyfriend that just broke up with them into the workplace, it's okay, because they're young, right? If their mom or dad is really hurting them, and that's the person they're living with when they're coming into work, and they're carrying some family hurt, it's okay, because they're young. Now, again, we don't have to be their counselor or their therapist, but we can listen and we can empathize and we can ask questions. And so I would just say, to have grace. They're not going to be the same kind of employee as the 50-year-old on your team. But I would argue that's why we need everybody, right? We need the 20-something with their unique perspective and their empathy and their compassion. And even they're going to understand the young adult experience way better than others, right? So if you're trying to reach them, and we need the 50-year-old, and we need the 30-year-old, and we need the 80-year-old, like we need all of us, because I truly believe that we're better together, that we can do so much more when we understand and empathize and lead with grace. And so I would just encourage you, the young leaders on your team, they have so much value, and also they're human beings who are young, who need to be believed in, to have grace for, and to give them space to lead exactly where they're at.
So good, Hannah. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Okay. I feel like I could keep asking you questions all day long, and maybe we'll have to do a part 2 at some point. But
Yes, let's.
yeah, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? Where can our listeners connect more with you?
Yes. If you're interested in the work of Generation Distinct, you can go to generationdistinct.com. If there's a young leader in your life who maybe they're not sure what they want to do with their life, maybe they're asking a lot of questions of, man, I want to change the world, I want to make an impact, and they're all talk and there's no action yet. We would love to invite you to nominate them for one of our cohorts. We'd love to have a conversation with them at generationdistinct.com. You can find out more about what I'm doing at hannahgronowski.com, where you can also book me to speak or invite me into what your organization is doing. We are also starting to work more with organizations to help them understand more of the experience of a young leader. And so if you're interested in more of that, you can find out more information or contact us at my website, hannahgronowski.com.
That's so good. Hannah, thank you. This was a gift and super helpful to all of us. And I'm so grateful for the work you're doing. So keep leading well, my friend. Proud of you.
Thank you. Such an honor to be here.